The multi-cooker is my new favorite pot, and I'm going to use it to make black bean soup. Basically, I'm just going to throw everything in there, and before I know it, I'm going to have a delicious soup with all the fixins. I'm going to cook some veggies in saute mode first. And I've got some finely diced onion and minced garlic. Delicious start. And then I have some diced red bell pepper. I just took the seeds out. A multi-cooker is primarily an electronic pressure cooker, but the great thing about it is you can saute in it before you put the lid on and pressure cook whatever it is you're making. It's really a miraculous machine, if you ask me. I'm also gonna add some sliced jalapenos, and then I'll stir all this around. And now I'm just gonna let the veggies cook until they're soft. It's gonna take 4 minutes. I'm back with the chili powder, and that goes in next. I'll add a couple of tablespoons. Gotta have chili powder whenever you make black beans. They just go together. And then a tablespoon of ground cumin, another of my favorites. And then the beans need quite a bit of salt, so I'll add a couple of teaspoons and give this a stir. Oh gosh, those veggies look amazing. Before I put the veggies into the multi-cooker, I added a little bit of lard. You can do butter or oil, whatever you prefer. Okay, this looks great. So I'll add in the beans, just dried black beans. And for the liquid, I've got vegetable broth. You can use chicken broth, even water would work, but I like the flavor of broth. Now the final thing is to set it to cook on manual. Here goes. So it's 50 minutes of cooking, followed by 10 minutes for the pressure to release naturally. Then I'll release the rest of the steam through quick release. The fun part is always taking off the lid and seeing what's inside. It looks really thick and rich. So this is a good time to add the juice of a couple of limes. All right, now I'll stir. And then you can serve the black bean soup just as it is now with the whole beans. But I kind of like to puree the beans a little bit just so the soup has a mix of textures. So there's no better tool for that than an immersion blender. Okay, I'm gonna stop there because I really like the texture. It's sort of a cross between refried beans and whole beans. So you want to get a nice bowl with a wide rim. Gosh, this looks great. Okay, now for the fixins, I'm going to add some sour cream, some diced avocado, some diced red onion, and some diced tomato. How gorgeous is this looking? And then just cilantro leaves. Sprinkle them over. It's always nice to give it a little extra squeeze of lime. Oh, so good. It's white chicken chili. And with a little help from the pressure cooker, it is super fast. Let me walk you through it. Step 1, the spice mix. For this, I added a tablespoon of ground cumin, a tablespoon of ground coriander, 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, half a teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, a teaspoon of kosher salt, and half a teaspoon of ground black pepper to a bowl, and mixed everything together. Then I got started with the pressure cooker. And this is step 2. First, I threw 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts into the pressure cooker. It was set to saute and had a little olive oil in it. I sprinkled over the spice mix and seared the breasts on both sides. Then I poured in 3 cups of low-sodium chicken broth, put the lid on, set the valve to sealing, and cooked it on manual for 6 minutes. So then, when the time was up and the steam had been released, I was ready for the next step. So this is step 3. And for this, I just shredded the chicken with 2 forks on a board, put it back in the pressure cooker, and added half a cup of heavy cream mixed with 2 tablespoons of masa harina to thicken the chili. Then I tumbled in a 10-ounce bag of frozen corn, 2 cans of drained and rinsed cannellini beans, 2 small cans of drained chopped green chilies, cooked everything until the corn was hot and the sauce had thickened, and put the lid on, ready for the drive home. So that's where I'm up to now. When I get home, I'll reheat it, and serving up will look something like this. I'll set everything out, then it's chili, and maybe a little more chili. Some grated Monterey Jack, diced avocado, and a wedge of lime. A bowl for everyone, and dinner is served. I'm gonna make a pot of corn and green chili chowder in a multi-cooker. It's gonna take no time at all, and it is going to be delicious. I started by putting the multi-cooker in saute mode, and I melted some butter. I just dropped in some chopped bacon, and in goes some sliced onion. Pretty good start to a soup. And I'm gonna stir these around just to get them totally coated in the butter. Oh, it already smells so good. And to make the soup extra scrumptious, I've got some fresh oregano. And I'll stir this around. I'm gonna give it about 3 minutes to cook. Moving on, I've got some minced garlic. And this is corn and green chili chowder. So I'm using 2 cans of diced green chilies. I'm not gonna drain them, I'll just put them right in. If you wanna get fancy, you can roast your own green chilies. I didn't wanna get fancy. I'm already running late, so the canned chilies are a great shortcut. And then I've got some fresh corn kernels, and then I'll stir this around just a little bit longer. I'm gonna add the liquid, just low sodium chicken broth. I'm gonna add about 3 cups or so. I'm gonna make a slurry to thicken the chowder. So I'll pour a little more broth into the pitcher, and I'll add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. So the slurry goes in. I'll give it a stir. The lid goes on. Now I'm gonna set the seal, and I'm gonna let this pressure cook for 5 minutes, and then I'll release the steam, and it'll be ready for the final step. When the little button pops down, then you can pull off the lid. Oh my gosh, it's really amazing how much happens in such a short amount of time in a pressure cooker. It just looks like it's been simmering away for 2 or 3 hours. I'm gonna make this ultra creamy by adding heavy cream. That's what corn chowder is all about for me. Creamy and rich and luscious. You don't have to have a big bowl. A little goes a long way. So now I've got 2 kinds of cheeses. Regular Monterey Jack, some pepper jack, just to give it a little bit of spice. Cheese is my favorite thing in the world. Now it needs just a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay, I'm gonna stir this all together. And while I do, let me show you how I serve this up. Everyone gets a bowl of the chowder. It is so pretty. Look at those flecks of color and that creamy cheesiness. Then a sprinkle of sliced green onions, a chunk of bread, and that's a working lunch. Totally easy. Short ribs are probably my favorite meat in the world. So I'm gonna make short ribs with collards. Now this is something I would normally make low and slow in a Dutch oven, but I'm gonna give it a multi-cooker twist, and they'll be ready in no time. I'm gonna dredge the short ribs first. I made a very simple flour mixture with just a little flour, salt, and pepper. I'm dredging the short ribs because it helps them get nice and brown and crispy, but also the flour helps to thicken the sauce in the multi-cooker, so it has kind of a dual purpose. That is one big pile of short ribs right there. Now in the multi-cooker, I have it in saute mode, and I've been cooking some bacon pieces. I'm gonna add this bacon back in later. I'm gonna take out the insert very carefully because it is very hot. And I wanna reserve some of this bacon grease for the collards, so I'm gonna carefully pour it into a bowl. Now I've just got to brown the ribs in batches. It'll just take a few minutes. Look at those short ribs, nice and brown. Now I'm gonna move on by adding some veggies to the multi-cooker. Diced onion and some chopped up carrot. Also add some chopped up celery and some sliced garlic. Now I'm also gonna add a heaping tablespoon of tomato paste, which gives the sauce a really rich, tangy flavor. Now the bottom of this insert is absolutely coated in flavor from the bacon, from browning the short ribs. And I'm gonna loosen it up by pouring in some red wine. So I'm gonna add the short ribs back in. They're brown on the outside, but they'll take a little bit of pressure cooking to get nice and tender. All this bacon is definitely not gonna go to waste. And then the last thing, I've got some fresh herbs, 2 little sprigs of rosemary, a bay leaf, and a couple of sprigs of fresh thyme. I want to make sure it's all in there in the winey veggie sauce. All right, I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to put the vent on sealing, and I'll cook it on high pressure for 40 minutes. See you then. The 40 minutes is up, so now I'm gonna let the steam release from the multi-cooker. So while it vents, I'm gonna get started on the collard greens that I'm gonna serve with the short ribs. I put some of that reserve bacon grease into the skillet, and I'm adding some sliced onion, and I've got 2 colors of bell pepper, red and yellow, and I just cut them into strips. And while those cook, I will get the collard greens ready. I'm just kind of roughly removing the stems from the collard greens. So I'm gonna go ahead and cook the collards with the peppers. Okay, I'm gonna season these with just salt and pepper, and then a little bit of crushed red pepper flakes, just to give everything a little bit of spice. And I'm gonna get the short ribs out of the multi-cooker. Oh my gosh, they smell so good. The magic of a multi-cooker is you can pressure cook in it, and the heat gets so high that whatever sauce you're cooking things in just gets nice and deep and rich, as if you've been simmering it for hours. If you play your cards right, the meat will pretty much fall off the bone. So I'm gonna go ahead and strain the liquid. Now to add just a little bit of acid to the liquid, I'll just shake in a little bit of red wine vinegar. I cannot forget the sauce. I'll mostly go over the short ribs just to make sure they're beautiful and glossy and flavorful. This is what they serve in heaven. I'm gonna sprinkle on some parsley. This is a dinner that would normally take 3 or 4 hours, ready in no time. All I've got left is this family pack of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I'm gonna make a multi-pot recipe for barbecue chicken, and then I'm gonna freeze the chicken and serve it over baked potatoes. The boys and lad absolutely love this dish. And using a multi-pot is so much easier than firing up the grill for the barbecue chicken. I'm gonna add a whole bunch of sliced yellow onion, and some minced garlic. And then for the barbecue part, I'm gonna add about 3/4 of a bottle of barbecue sauce. Any kind is fine, whatever you've got in your pantry. And then 1/4 cup of honey. I am loving my multi-cooker these days. It really is a revelation. I cannot believe how quickly it cooks things like this. Tablespoon of vinegar, and then I am not content with anything that doesn't have a little spice. So I've got to add about 3 chipotle peppers packed in adobo sauce, a little bit of salt. That barbecue sauce is plenty salty. And then just a little bit of water, about 1/4 cup. Now I don't need to stir it too much. I just want to make sure everything is nestled down in there so it'll cook really evenly. Now the lid goes on. I'll seal the vent, And I'm gonna pressure cook this for 12 minutes. I always love opening the multi-cooker and seeing the magic inside. Ooh, it looks so good. Barbecue chicken in minutes. How do you like that? It's just amazing, and it is so tender. It's just about to fall apart. I love the color that happens in a pressure cooker. It just gets dark and rich. You'd usually have to cook something for a couple hours to get it like that. Now I'll just use 2 forks to shred up the chicken. I'll grab some of the sauce out of the cooker and ladle it in. I don't wind up using all the sauce, but I like to get at least half of it back in with the chicken. The sauce is gonna make sure the chicken stays marvelously flavorful. Okay, I'm gonna keep shredding away, and then I'm gonna let it cool. So while it does, let me tell you how the baked potatoes are gonna pan out. First, I get a bag of the thawed barbecue chicken into a skillet to heat it up. It just takes about 5 minutes. Then I take a potato that I rubbed with oil and baked for an hour, slice it open, pile the barbecue chicken on top, then some sour cream, grated cheddar cheese, sliced green onion, and that's a perfect dinner for 1, or 2, or 3, or 8. Who's gonna say no to that? When it comes to making comfort food for cowboys, mashed potatoes are the ultimate no-brainer. And if those mashed potatoes don't take an hour plus for me to make, well, sign me up. They're made in a multi-cooker, and you won't believe how easy they are. I just cut up some peeled russet potatoes into chunks, and I'm just dropping them into the multi-cooker. Mashed potatoes are so delicious, but it's always a bit of a time commitment. Boiling them usually takes a good 45 minutes to an hour, but not in the multi-cooker. It's very, very quick. And I'll add about 3/4 of a cup of water. And then of course, you gotta salt the potatoes. So a good teaspoon or 2. And then I'll put the lid on the cooker and put it on manual for 10 minutes. I'm gonna set this to vent, and then I'll get to mashing. What is so glorious about multi-cooker mashed potatoes is you don't have to drain the water out of the potatoes. When I make regular mashed potatoes, there's always that inevitable trip to the sink to drain all the water off. Okay, now I've got some creaminess to add. A stick of softened butter. Yes, a stick. There'll be 4 of us. That's only 1/4 a stick per person. You like how I justify things? Half a package of softened cream cheese, about 4 ounces. Then I'll start with a little splash of milk. I can always add more if it needs it. Now these are quick ranch potatoes, partly because we live on a ranch, but also because I'm gonna add some ranch dressing mix. And then of course I wanna have that little speckle of black pepper in the potatoes. So I'll go back in with the masher. This is so hot in this pot that it's really just melting everything instantly. I want these to stay nice and warm, so I'm gonna put on the lid. First, I'll get the quick ranch potatoes into a serving dish and garnish them with finely chopped chives. I'm putting a fast spin on a cowboy favorite with pressure cooker pulled pork sandwiches. I'm gonna brown the pork first. I'm starting with just half a batch. And I'm gonna add some seasoning while it sears. A tablespoon of salt, about half a teaspoon of black pepper, and then a teaspoon of chili powder, and a half a teaspoon each of garlic powder and onion powder. When I brown the second batch of the pork, I'll add seasoning then too. Okay, the second batch of pork is browned. So I'm gonna put the first batch in. This is a big bunch of pork shoulder, and it's gonna make a lot of pulled pork. Now I'm also gonna add an onion that I peeled and cut into quarters. And then I've got 5 cloves of peeled garlic, and I'll just stir it all together. You know, the bottom of the insert of this pressure cooker is just completely coated in little brown bits and flavors, so I'm gonna help that along by adding 3 cups of chicken stock. Okay. Now, I don't need to do another thing to this right now except just put on the lid, set it to cook for 40 minutes on sealing. A good classic pulled pork sandwich is pretty hard to improve upon, but I'm gonna try by making a jar of pickled jalapenos and onions. These pickles add a really nice crunch, a little bit of tartness amid all of that sweet barbecue sauce. I'm gonna make the pickling liquid. I started with a cup of apple cider vinegar and a cup of water. And for a little sweetness, I'll add a teaspoon of sugar and a teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna turn this on high and heat this up pretty quickly. Okay, while the pickling liquid heats up, I'm gonna put the jalapenos and the onions into a big mason jar. I just sliced fresh jalapenos. I didn't get rid of the seeds at all. I want these pickled onions and jalapenos to be really spicy. Okay, this is just right, very, very hot. So I'm going to carefully pour this into the jar over the onions and jalapenos. Try not to drip too much on the counter. The perfect amount. I'm gonna put the lid on kind of loose since it's still really hot. Now I'm gonna let this come to room temperature and then I'll chill it for an hour and the pickles will be ready. The pressure cooker finished doing its thing and I released the pressure manually and then got the pork out of the machine and I'm just shredding it. I'm trying to get all the big chunks broken up. That looks fantastic. Now I'm gonna toss in some bottled barbecue sauce, probably about 1.5 cups. I'll just pour it over. I'm gonna take extra sauce. That is looking so good. Let me tell you how these delicious sandwiches are gonna come together. A bun, juicy pork, pickled jalapenos and onions, lid on, lunch. Dinner is fast approaching, so I'm gonna pull it together using my new favorite piece of cooking equipment, a multi-cooker. I'm making pork carnitas. Something that would usually take over 3 hours to make is gonna be done in no time at all. Now I used the multi-cooker to saute 3 pounds of pork shoulder that I cut into big cubes. I sauteed it until it got nice color on the outside. Now I'm gonna saute 2 sliced onions and 2 sliced and seeded poblano chilies. Pressure cooking is something that scares a lot of people, but the magic of it is it cooks something like carnitas in 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna saute the onions and peppers. It's gonna take about 3 minutes. So I'm gonna add some great flavor. 2 teaspoons of ancho chili powder, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, one of my top 5 favorite spices of all time, and then a big tablespoon of Mexican oregano. I'm adding a bunch of minced garlic. Now I just want to keep sauteing this so the spices will start to develop their flavor. They'll coat all those vegetables. Whenever you're using a pressure cooker, you definitely want to add liquid. I'm adding mine in the form of lemon lime pop, just a whole can. I'm gonna add some fresh orange juice and some fresh orange zest. I love the flavor of carnitas. So the pork, of course, is the star of the show, and I'm gonna add it back in. Now I'll put the lid on, and I'll walk you through the rest of the cooking process. First, I'll seal the cooker and set the cook time to 25 minutes. When the time's up, it turns itself off, and after 10 minutes of natural venting, I'll release the remaining pressure by switching to quick vent. I'll let the steam escape, and I'll wait until the float valve drops. It takes about 2 minutes. All the pressure has safely released. Oh, so I'm gonna take this pork out. I'm gonna shred the meat. All I have to do is basically breathe on it. It's gonna fall apart. I'm gonna put the pork under the broiler. I'm gonna let it start to crisp up. And while it does, I'm gonna make some queso and warm some tortillas. I'll just throw a pound of cubed processed cheese into a pan, turn the heat to medium-low, add a 10-ounce can of hot diced tomatoes and chilies, 2 4-ounce jars of diced pimentos with their juice, mix them together, and stir the queso occasionally until the cheese is fully melted. Then for the tortillas, I'll heat them in a microwave wrapped in a dishcloth for about 15 seconds. They're ready, so I'll just keep them wrapped up until it's time to eat. And look at that, the queso's done. Back to the carnitas. They are crisp, delicious, and ready to come out. Look at how scrumptious this pork looks. All those little brown bits, so crispy. Now I'm gonna get some of this luscious cooking juice. I don't want this to go to waste. I'm just gonna stir this and mix all the pork together with the juices. Those crispy bits aren't going anywhere. They'll still be part of the mix. Oh, carnitas are a triumph. First a tortilla, then carnitas, a nice big pile of meat, or maybe 2 spoonfuls. After that, a generous spoonful of queso, a sprinkling of cilantro leaves, and finally, peach salsa. I've been browning some Mexican chorizo sausage with some finely diced onion. So I'll go ahead and turn the skillet off, and I'm gonna make the egg mixture for the egg bites. It starts with 4 eggs, and I wanna make it really creamy. So in goes a 1/4 cup of heavy cream and a 1/4 cup of sour cream, and then some salt and pepper. And that is as complicated as the egg mixture goes. This is a great recipe because you can do so many different versions. Imagine anything that you would put in an omelet, and that's what you can put in a ready-to-go egg bite. Now, to assemble them and get them ready for the multi-cooker, I'm gonna use one of these great molds. You can get them online. And I sprayed it, and I'll take a couple of spoonfuls of the chorizo and onion mixture, and then a little pinch of grated Monterey Jack cheese. And then all you have to do is just pour enough egg mixture to reach just below the rim. Okay, now I'm gonna do 6 more exactly the same way. Okay, the mold is all filled. I'm gonna cover the top with foil just to get it all secure in there. Okay, now before I put this into the multi-cooker, I'm gonna put in the little trivet. It comes with it. And I'll pour some water into the machine. And then I'll just carefully lower the mold into the machine. And the lid goes on. And now I'm all set. So it's ready, steady, cook. I'll switch the pressure valve to sealing, press steam, and set the timer for 10 minutes. Then let the pressure release naturally for 10 minutes. And use a wooden spoon to set the valve to venting for quick release of the pressure. Okay, now that all the pressure is released, I can take them out of the multi-cooker. Oh, look at that steam. That's a very good sign. So I can grab the rim of the pan. Ooh, it's nice and steamy. So I'm gonna take off the foil and look at what's underneath. Now, if I play my cards right, they will slide right out. I love it when they come out in one piece. These are so great. Imagine sending these out the door 2 at a time, wrapped in a paper towel for your teenagers. Or if you're like me, you can enjoy them on a plate with a cup of coffee, a glass of orange juice. They're so versatile.